What will happen when the truth about Emma's fall is revealed? The evening was filled with romance at an elegant restaurant in Denver. Emma and Jonathan celebrated their wedding anniversary in a sophisticated setting with soft lighting and a breathtaking view of the city. However, what initially seemed like a moment of celebration quickly turned into a scene of mystery and discomfort. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Emma started feeling worse as the couple indulged in refined dishes and wine toasts. An overwhelming sensation made her look around as if something was wrong, and her heart raced. Noticing the change in her expression, Jonathan asked if she was okay, but a cloud of anxiety loomed over her. The air seemed heavier and denser than before, as if something sinister was about to happen. What caused this discomfort? Is there something darker hidden, or was it just everyday stress? Emma had always been part of the family, but now she began to question everything. Could it be a memory from a previous moment? The tension grew as the food on their plates grew cold. The restaurant's maestro played soft music, which seemed to contradict her unease. Emma tried to focus on Jonathan's loving words, but her mind was drifting, tormented by strange images and fragments of memories of a much more real danger. A fleeting image of an unknown individual came to her mind, followed by a whisper that made her shiver. What was really happening? Emma had felt watched before, but not anymore. Why couldn't she shake that feeling of being followed? What were they planning to do that night? A sense of foreboding began to spread as Jonathan tried to calm her with gestures and words. A shadow hovered over them, like the mystery of speaking bodies, which investigates the meaning behind hidden emotions. The romantic atmosphere turned into a labyrinth of doubts, making Emma wonder, were they really safe? This fascinating enigma is just the starting point for a journey of discoveries where every little detail could be the key to the truth she still can't grasp. Will you pay attention to each of these dark mysteries? All the answers are closer than they seem, and the unfolding of this thrilling story could change everything. It was a fun evening, but why did Emma's smile quickly turn into anger? The glow of the lights, the music, and the laughter filled the air, but Emma began to lose the sparkle in her eyes as if a shadow had settled in her heart. While she struggled to laugh at her partner's jokes, a growing sense of unease gradually engulfed her, becoming impossible to ignore. Other restaurant patrons began to observe the couple with concern. The sound of the party mixed with small murmurs that floated through the air. Emma started to sweat on her forehead despite her efforts to remain composed. As things became more difficult, panic began to set in. "Are you okay?" her boyfriend Lucas asked, his face clearly showing concern. Although Emma tried to smile, she really couldn't breathe. The rising murmurs alerted the waiter, who approached. "Miss, do you need anything?" Emma shook her head, fighting the nausea that grew like a hurricane. Her world began to spin, and each laugh she heard seemed to echo farther and farther away. She felt the anxiety in the heavy air. The tension increased, and other patrons began to stand up. An elderly woman, enjoying her meal at a nearby table, placed her hand over her heart. "It doesn't look good," she murmured to her companion. Thus the room, once cheerful, transformed into a sea of people watching closely. Amid the growing despair, Lucas held Emma's hand, trying to calm her. "Stay strong," he said with a trembling voice. "We're together." However, Emma was no longer present. Her mind drifted away from the joy, the lights, and the smiling faces, while reality became a blurred, indistinct mess. What was supposed to be a party turned into an endless nightmare. What was she doing? What was the plan for the night? Emma's struggle created a chain reaction, though the answer was close. The crowd around them became increasingly agitated as Jonathan stared at Emma, his wife. The restaurant, which was once a vibrant and eclectic place, was now enveloped in a tense silence that was only broken by Emma's labored breathing. Her body felt unexpected pain, and it soon became evident that this wasn't just ordinary pain. Every movement she made drew Jonathan's worried gaze, a dance of despair that reflected his growing concern. When life turns into an unexpected nightmare, what else can you do? Jonathan thought. The faces of the people around him showed a mixture of terror and curiosity, and they seemed absorbed by the situation. Has anyone ever experienced this? Could their love overcome it? In that room, every breath Emma took was heard like a silent scream. Finally, a waiter, who was flustered by the scene, mustered the courage and ran to get help. What fate awaited the young woman until help arrived? Adrenaline pulsed through Jonathan. Although he knew he needed to act, his uncertainty consumed him. Could this be the last part of their story together? What would happen to the life they had built with joy, dreams, and promises? Conversations between strangers became more evident as the restaurant room turned into a scene of terror and tension. Restless glances from strangers met, and it seemed that compassion suddenly emerged among them. Emma's struggle had generated a chain reaction, a brief but strong connection. Like a spark in a dry field, the situation sparked interest and a strong desire to help. Jonathan looked at the gasping crowd. What was tormenting each of these people in their minds? Why did some people remain inert while others quickly moved toward danger? How could Emma remain indifferent if her pain resonated in their own lives? His fear was dissipated by a wave of determination he felt. That fight was his too, and he wasn't willing to give up until there was some hope. The atmosphere in the restaurant was filled with laughter and lively conversations until a waiter arrived. Approaching the waiter, Jonathan, sitting at the table with Emma, noticed his worried look. She didn't show up. Hearing the waiter whisper in his ear made Jonathan's eyes widen. His spine felt a chill. Emma was always punctual, and moreover, she had a captivating presence that lit up any room. Jonathan's worried face was noticed by the waiter, who insisted he try calling her. He grabbed his phone with a trembling hand and couldn't make the call. Something was wrong. His heart raced. Emma usually let others know when she was running late. Jonathan looked around as the waiter walked away. The table was full of people, but he felt that everything around him was beginning to disappear, and it had become just his anguishing concern. He felt an oppressive sense that he needed to act, and a bitter intuition. He rose from the table and walked toward the exit, but his phone received a message before he could reach the door. The words that Jonathan didn't expect were read with a pale face. Instead of being from Emma, the message came from an unknown number. She's in danger. It might be too late. A wave of adrenaline washed over him, and his stomach churned. Although he knew he needed to find Emma, where could she be? Noticing the change in Jonathan's expression, the waiter stepped closer. "Is everything okay?" he asked, but Jonathan barely heard. As he struggled to think clearly, the tables behind him became a blur. The worrying notion that she might actually be in danger fixed itself in his mind. After several attempts, he finally decided to search for her, asking everyone around him. His pressure in his chest increased, and every second felt like an eternity. Jonathan left the restaurant and headed to the sidewalk. Although the cold night air cut his face, he didn't feel it. The only thing on his mind was the image of Emma, smiling and full of life, and the possibility that something might take that joy away from her. He took a deep breath and decided not to give up. The party that gathered friends and family in a charming suburban house seemed perfect, as he needed it to find her before it was too late. Laughter and music filled the air, while the lights flickered cheerfully, reflecting the joy of those present. Emma and Jonathan danced among them, enchanted by the enthusiasm of the moment. However, the joy was quickly interrupted when Emma began to convulse out of nowhere. A wave of terror gripped Jonathan, who was always attentive to her. He quickly approached her, placing his hands on her shoulders, his eyes wide with fear. The image that was once joyful was now a terrifying chaos. The music stopped, the laughter was replaced by screams of concern, and the cheerful atmosphere vanished. Emma fell to the ground, and Jonathan tried to remain calm, but his helplessness enveloped him like a cloud. The murmurs mixed, and Jonathan realized that the world had changed. He called for help and dialed for an ambulance. His chest became a knot of despair. In such a fragile moment, he held Emma's hand tightly. Every second felt like an eternity, and the fragility of life became evident to him. The line between celebration and tragedy was becoming thinner and thinner. Although the minutes passed slowly, the sense of urgency grew. Jonathan looked at Emma with fear, but amid the fear he also saw a glimpse of the vibrant and strong woman he knew. He said everything would be okay, even if his words were empty. The only thing keeping his sanity was the hope that the ambulance would arrive quickly, despite the weight of the situation. The sound of sirens in the distance finally reassured Jonathan. He was aware that specialists would come to provide assistance. As the ambulance arrived, 2 paramedics rushed to them and began to care for Emma competently. Jonathan felt the pressure in his chest ease, but he remained uncertain about what would happen. Tension and anticipation replaced the worried looks of friends. The red lights illuminated the tense faces of the paramedics inside the ambulance, while the sound of the engine echoed amid the chaos, and he clung to the hope that they would still have the chance to celebrate life together. A reminder that life was hanging by a thread, Jonathan held Emma's hand and felt the coldness of her skin against his. Even though his own voice trembled, he whispered his promises. However, deep in his heart, uncertainty began to form. With irregular breathing and eyes closed, he looked at her and wondered how they had ended up here. That smile that used to shine on her face was now just a distant memory, suffocated by fear. The afternoon had started like any other, walking through the park, laughing and sharing dreams until everything changed in an instant. The collision occurred on a dangerous curve with a speeding car. As his regret continued to grow, Jonathan still felt the adrenaline coursing through his body. Why hadn't he been more careful? Why hadn't he paid attention to the precaution his mother always advised? His dark mind seemed to rhyme with the sound of the siren. He found himself enveloped in shadows now that Emma had always been the light in his life. He was able to clearly conceptualize his intentions: the trip to the beach, the house they intended to buy, and the children they wanted to have. His chest felt the weight of each concept and dream they had shared. The paramedic beside him began the procedure, but Jonathan was lost in his own thoughts. He closed his eyes amid the noise of the machines and the compression in his chest, in a silent plea asking the universe to bring her back. Helplessness prevented him from screaming. As the seconds passed, the anguish became suffocating. He whispered, "Fight. I need you, Emma." He remembered every moment of joy they had together and every laugh they had shared. In his mind, the moments repeated as time passed. In the moment when his fragility became so evident, he now knew that he needed to be strong. Jonathan promised himself never to leave her alone. Amid the chaos of the night, the hospital pulsed with the frenetic energy of emergencies. Hope, though faltering, remained like a thin thread between their hearts. The sound of monitors and the hurried murmurs of healthcare professionals filled the corridors. Ashley, a dedicated nurse, struggled to remain calm in an environment that had become desperate. The line of patients was endless, and every face reflected anxiety and pain. She moved swiftly between stretchers and beds, her heart racing with each emergency call, the fluorescent light illuminating her path. Emma, a young mother, lay unconscious and wrapped in a shroud of anxiety among the patients. Amid the chaos, her eyes searched for a bucket of hope. When Ashley saw her, Emma's intense gaze sparked her intuition. There was a deeper error than just a diagnosis. Connections formed in her mind like puzzle pieces as she observed Emma. She recalled a case she had heard about a few weeks earlier regarding a new antidote for a catastrophic viral infection. She learned that Emma had a severe condition and that she might be one of the few carriers. Although it was a race against time, there were clear and terrifying risks. Ashley couldn't hesitate to save her if possible. Ashley made the decision to act on the information she had. She knew that her actions could easily be contested, so she rushed to the supply cabinet to find an antidote. She searched as time seemed to pass, but her determination outweighed her fears. She finally found the vial with adrenaline in her hands. But she always had a doubt. What if she was wrong? What if that wasn't Emma's real need? However, there was no time for hesitation when she returned to the young mother's bedside. She administered the dose carefully and quickly. A strong silence prevailed as the clear liquid flowed. As her heart raced, Ashley focused her attention on Emma. She really knew that taking risks could jeopardize her career, but she also had to have faith that she was doing the right thing. Ashley's courage became the last hope, and Emma's fate was now in her hands. Ashley looked out the hospital window, watching the street's movement. Her mind was far from that beauty as the sun began to set, tinting the sky a vibrant orange. She had acted impulsively just a few days ago, breaking the standards she had always followed. She had crossed a line by saving Emma, a young patient in a critical situation. She still remembered the girl's grateful look, but the weight of the consequences was becoming unbearable. The dismissal came quickly. In a serious tone, the hospital director didn't offer many explanations. He only spoke about the severity of her actions and how they endangered Emma's life and the institution's reputation overall. Although she tried to defend herself and scream, she had no words. Although the price of courage seemed too high, deep down, she knew she had acted with her heart. Tears streamed down her face as she sat in her car. Job loss, security, and part of her identity. For her, the hospital was more than just a workplace. It was her life. Moreover, now she felt lost without it. Was it worth it? Doubt and sadness mixed. They occupied her mind. Ashley began to cope with the emptiness of her daily life. The number of calls from friends decreased, and she found that many couldn't understand what motivated her. The support turned into suspicious looks and murmurs. As she recalled every second of that critical situation, the weight of loneliness began to become suffocating. Emma survived but suffered from the consequences of her choice. Ashley began to think about her options and decided not to let herself be defeated. Medicine had always been her vocation, but now she was haunted by the idea of starting over in a new place. Although the future was uncertain, she knew she couldn't give up so easily. Finding a new path that aligned with her values while still allowing her to continue saving lives was imperative. The courage that led her to defend Emma couldn't be completely destroyed. Deep down, Ashley hoped that someone would one day understand what she was doing. Moreover, she might return to doing what she loved most, but this time with more wisdom and discernment. That was a new beginning on an unknown path, but she was willing to face whatever came. Jonathan sat at the dinner table, his eyes fixed on the table as Ashley's words echoed in his mind. She had made a decision that would leave deep marks on their lives and relationship. At first, Jonathan couldn't understand the impulse that led her to do this. In contrast to Ashley's aspirations, he had always prioritized the quality of their marriage. As his anger began to manifest within him, Jonathan chose to confront her. He found her in the warmth of the living room. A knife could cut through the tension. Jonathan poured out his frustration without a second thought. "Why didn't you tell me? You did this without consulting me. Everything is now in danger." His voice, normally soft, was clouded with anger and despair. Ashley looked at him as she struggled not to tear up. "Jonathan, I did this for us. For our dreams and our families." Her sincere defense seemed ineffective. Jonathan saw in her the blame he needed to assume, as well as the voluntary betrayal of the trust they had built. Emma was in a crucial phase of her life at that moment. After years of uncertainty and sacrifices, she felt compelled to confront Jonathan about his decisions. The painful situation he faced and the love he still felt for him divided her heart. Everything became even more intense due to her fragility. Knowing that the time for passively waiting had ended, she whispered to herself, "I can't continue like this." Emma impulsively decided that it was time to confront her husband. She didn't know that by doing so, she would become a more powerful and influential figure than she could have predicted. But the fear of losing everything consumed her. Her mind began to fill with doubts. Moreover, what would happen if Jonathan wasn't willing to change? What if Ashley had been the solution to the problems affecting their relationship? Thus, an inevitable battle was predicted. Emma felt she was about to enter an explosion of emotions that could save or destroy her with every breath. Emma looked out the window and saw dry leaves fluttering in the wind, while Jonathan, trapped in his own anger and confusion, prepared for what was to come. She needed to find the courage to fight for what she believed in. Although autumn had never been her favorite season, its beauty seemed distant and almost impossible to identify at that time. As she closed her eyes, memories flooded her. Jonathan, with his charming smile and empty promises, had been her guide and guardian. The love that once enveloped her now suffocated her. She thought of the nights she eagerly waited for a call, examining each of his messages for any indication that their relationship was still valuable. Now the expectations of a life together full of adventures sounded like echoes of an old song. Emma felt she had lost herself amid the distractions Jonathan caused, while her own goals were ignored. At that moment, the truth of the relationship wavered like a flickering lamp. Emma recalled her desire to become an artist and express the essence of the world through canvases. However, at the moment, her only art was fulfilling Jonathan's expectations. A love that made her a shadow of herself, a love that demanded sacrifices at every step, and she knew this dynamic was harmful to her well-being. Emma decided to meet Jonathan at the cafe they used to visit. A mix of determination and fear, her heart raced. When she saw him arrive, a part of her was still enchanted by his deep gaze, but another part was determined to assert her autonomy. She revealed everything she had held back for so long, writing down her words. Their conversation was about the promises that were unfulfilled and how her life had become a faded patchwork quilt. At first, Jonathan was perplexed and tried to avoid the conversation, but Emma insisted. Every word that left her lips felt like an act of liberation. She realized she no longer needed his approval to be happy. The growth she so desired didn't come from a partner who kept her tethered, but from the courage to step away and rediscover her essence. Her life gained a new realism as a result of these revealed truths. Emma discovered that genuine love doesn't imprison, but liberates. She accepted the possibility of a tomorrow where she would primarily be the protagonist of her own story. Ashley was always curious, but Emma's death awakened an unshakable determination in her. Her world seemed filled with unanswered questions since the tragedy, and the most urgent of them concerned Jonathan, who seemed to be the last link in her friend's life. As the days passed, Ashley decided to take responsibility and get involved in an investigation that would unravel layers of secrets and lies. At the beginning of her research, she gathered information about Jonathan's life. He was a promising artist, but also a mystery. The young woman used the internet to explore social media, blogs, and news. She found photos of Emma with Jonathan, showing smiles and shared moments. However, there was an unsettling feeling hovering over the images, as if something dark and profound was hidden behind them. Ashley decided to seek out mutual friends. Informal conversations revealed that Jonathan's personality had gaps. The word controlling frequently appeared, and Emma seemed to have changed since she started seeing him. With each new conversation, the pieces of the puzzle seemed to fit together, but new questions always arose. What really happened on the night Emma fell? The young woman opted to interview people who had met Jonathan and Emma at a party a few months ago. There, various relationship stories began to emerge. While one of Emma's friends said her joy seemed to have gradually diminished after dating him, a friend said Jonathan was possessive. Ashley recorded everything with a mix of apprehension and anxiety. Thanks to a co-worker of Emma, Ashley managed to access the messages between the two friends. A concerning pattern of behavior and a tone of urgency that indicated Emma felt something was wrong was noted when observing the exchanges. The notion that Jonathan had manipulated Emma's life became a constant shadow in her mind. Finally, during an investigation, Ashley was informed of a location where Jonathan used to gather with friends. She decided to confront him with courage. The atmosphere of the place sealed Ashley's fate in a world of clearly deceptive appearances before even being present. Ashley and Emma were always more than just friends. They were inseparable partners in the pursuit of truth, and the search for answers would ultimately reveal not only what happened to Emma, but also Jonathan's true essence. The two felt increasingly connected to an enigma that seemed to deepen as they investigated since Samantha, an acquaintance of their group, mysteriously disappeared. They used note cards and computers to dive into a network of data that revealed dark aspects of the city. The involvement of powerful and influential people made the search even more fascinating. One of the nights they gathered in the school library, they discovered an unexpected connection between Samantha and an elite group operating in the shadows. At first, they thought it was just another strange detail, but as the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, the concern grew. Each new clue seemed to crumble beneath their feet, revealing a web of betrayal and dishonesty. Ashley discovered that Emma behaved differently throughout the investigation. Her eyes, once filled with determination, now seemed heavier. "Are you hiding something from me?" Ashley asked, her voice tense. Emma hesitated but soon recovered and stated they were in this together. However, there was a sense of mistrust in the air, suggesting the truth might be more complicated than they expected. As they began to unveil the faces behind the masks, they discovered that many who seemed loyal to Samantha were involved in dark secrets. Mysterious encounters, anonymous messages, and a diary full of cryptic references became part of their daily lives, a constant call to keep searching. Over time, what started as a simple investigation turned into a struggle both internally and externally. People were shocked by a final discovery as they neared the peak. Emma found a photo of Samantha at a party with people Ashley knew. Among smiles and toasts was someone who seemed to be a faithful friend, but was actually a hidden enemy. The revelation was devastating. The shadows that had accumulated around them now became dangerous, making the truth a powerful and dangerous weapon. Ashley had always been a woman with sharp instincts, and lately, those instincts were leading her to a dark place. The real challenge awaited them, and each step towards the answer was a dance between light and darkness. Her husband, Jonathan, was everything she had ever wanted, a kind, caring man and an excellent provider. But something bothered her. Lies spread, unexpected phone calls, and messages quickly deleted. Ashley made the decision to investigate due to her doubts. One Friday night, she began her surveillance with her heart beating faster than usual. She saw Jonathan meeting a woman she didn't recognize in the park where they used to walk, hidden behind a tree. The seemingly innocent meeting was marked by smiles and a sense of familiarity that left her shattered. Ashley's decision to follow Jonathan until she discovered the truth behind that interaction led her to suppress her emotions. In the following days, she devised a plan with more determination. She studied his schedules, noted details, and silently followed him, remaining quiet. The puzzle revealed itself with each step of her investigation. Jonathan was more than just a caring husband. He frequented places Ashley never imagined. Dinners, meetings, and regular encounters, all kept secret. The discovery led her to a world she had never seen before. She began to notice signs of a web of lies, such as compromising cell phone messages, emails exchanged with people who were unfamiliar, and an unfounded history of bank transactions. Each new discovery increased the conviction that the man beside her was not who he claimed to be. One night, while the city was covered in fog, Ashley followed Jonathan to a discreet hotel. The mission was painful due to her racing heart and conflicting emotions. Upon entering, she discovered that Jonathan wasn't alone. She saw the same woman she had seen in the park when she entered the lobby. Her narrative destroyed what should have been protection and love. Ashley discovered that the truth can be more treacherous than it seems. The husband she thought she knew concealed secrets that made her daily life a farce. Emma entered the police station with her heart racing because with each revelation, she found herself confronted not only with betrayal, but also with the fundamental question of what love and protection really were. The tired and restless faces watched her with a mix of indifference and curiosity, and the room was cold and impersonal. With a face that now seemed almost unrecognizable, she approached the table where Jonathan waited for her. It seemed that the man she loved had become a shadow of his former self, darker and more distant. Jonathan was surrounded by police officers, but as always, he seemed to have control over things. Emma looked into his eyes and noticed the indifference that had always lurked beneath the surface of his charm. Although he smiled, it wasn't a smile of love. Instead, it was a smile that hid something deeper and more disturbing. His intent was sharp as knives, despite the soft words that left his lips. "Emma, you don't have to do this." "Were you aware that all this would happen?" He spoke in a soft voice as if trying to convince her that the fault was hers. Emma's heart tightened. She wanted to pretend that Jonathan still had some sense of goodness, but the memories of the lies and betrayals he had spoken remained alive. The truths began to emerge during the interrogation. Jonathan manipulated the emotions of many others, not just hers. The testimonies of the other victims began to spread throughout the room. Each story reflected the suffering she had experienced. As she learned that her emotional suffering was only the tip of the iceberg, Emma became furious. Jonathan had created a pattern of destruction, a labyrinth of manipulation that left a trail of shattered lives. She was furious inside and raised her voice to confront him. "You are not the person I initially imagined. Love is not what it seems." These words broke the silence, and the air filled with truth. Jonathan looked at her with anger and contempt, not with guilt. The confrontation had shifted from being just a revelation about him to being a mirror of her real feelings. Emma discovered that betrayal wasn't just infidelity, but also manipulation and breaking hearts without thinking about the consequences when she saw Jonathan's true character crumble before her. The life she had lived was falling apart, and the real battle was just beginning, not against Jonathan, but against herself. Emma had to reclaim her power and rewrite her story, now with a new understanding of love and her own strength. After months of suffering and struggle, she finally managed to reconcile with her past. The traumatic experience that had trapped her in a cycle of fear and insecurity almost destroyed her, but Ashley's arrival helped her see the end of the tunnel. Emma became more determined and decided it was time to leave everything that harmed her behind. Ashley became a refuge for Emma due to her enthusiasm and solidarity. They united to explore the area around their small town, rediscovering places that had lost their charm. Each trip offered a new chance to heal, a new chapter where the past mingled with the present. The painful memories that haunted her began to be replaced by shared laughter and the small joys of everyday life. Emma took part in pottery classes, a hobby that had attracted her since childhood. She felt she was creating her new life by shaping the clay with her own hands. She found the studio a refuge where tensions dissipated and she could express herself freely. Even though her works were imperfect, they represented her rebirth. Emma felt she was rebuilding herself from scratch every time the clay developed. Ashley was always by her side and encouraged her to exhibit the products she had made at a local fair. Emma hesitated before accepting, though nervous. But she was motivated by the idea of sharing her work and inspiring other women to rise amid difficulties. She decided, with Ashley's unwavering support, that it was time to show the world that the end of that nightmare shouldn't be the end, but rather a period in her story. The tension increased when the day of the fair arrived. However, Emma realized she was welcoming a new beginning as she saw her booth filled with her works and smiled beside Ashley. Her victory was demonstrated by every individual who stopped to admire her creations. She believed she was sowing hope not only for herself, but also for all the souls who, like her, sought to rebuild their stories. Emma then discovered that the past didn't define her, but that every new experience, friendship, and choice she made were the foundation of her future. Ashley and Emma met at a shelter for victims of domestic violence, each with scars and stories of suffering. Over time, they became friends and began sharing their lives, discovering a common strength to overcome pain. Both found they were not just survivors. They were warriors capable of breaking the cycle of abuse for other women. The idea of founding a non-governmental organization, NGO, began to take shape as a dream. They decided the organization would be a safe place for victims to find support, shelter, and hope for a new life. Emma, with her experience in administration, and Ashley, with her charisma and communication skills, carefully planned each step. With the help of friends and neighbors, they started with a small fundraising event in their community. Due to unexpected support, they gradually began to gather the means necessary to realize their dream. The money raised was used to build a modest but welcoming space for the NGO. They named the initiative Renaissance to reflect the change they wanted to bring to women. Emma and Ashley gave lectures on self-confidence and empowerment, as well as referrals for health services and legal assistance. They believed that every life they touched was an achievement. As the organization expanded, more women sought help. Emma and Ashley cared for each other with affection, and each story brought back memories of what they had gone through. They not only helped them regain their lives, but also formed a community of support and love as they worked together. The feedback from the participants was very inspiring. Many of them said that seeing the founders gave them the impression that it was also possible to start over. After months of hard work, the NGO gained recognition in the area and became an example for other similar initiatives. Emma and Ashley were always moved to see women valuing themselves again, regaining their self-confidence, and dreaming of better futures. What began as an attempt to save their own lives turned into a beacon of hope for many others who had to deal with the terror of violence in a way similar to theirs. The strength of friendship and solidarity transformed lives, demonstrating that when working together, they could overcome any obstacle. Emma and Ashley were just beginning when the fight against domestic violence became a lifelong mission. As the NGO came to life, their work impacted many souls. Emma and Ashley represented hope for other women, showing that change is possible even after the most challenging difficulties. In the heart of a difficult city, two friends, united by their painful experiences, decided it was time to turn their stories into something more meaningful. They created a non-profit organization aimed at helping women in identical circumstances. Ashley was a travel companion for Emma, whose life was marked by deep traumas and emotional abuse. Ashley had dealt with chemical dependency and its side effects, but she was ready to change Emma's life. They worked together to create a safe environment where other women could open up and share their experiences. A small room, full of strangers but with similar stories, gathered at the first event of the NGO. Many people arrived with hesitation initially, but as Emma and Ashley spoke about their own stories, a sense of belonging began to emerge. Each woman shared her struggles and victories, and tears and laughter intertwined. People gradually began to believe there was light at the end of the tunnel. The NGO expanded to become more than just a meeting place. It became a home for weary souls and broken hearts at each gathering. The stories shared were extremely moving. Laura recounted how she finally had the courage to leave her partner after years of an abusive relationship. Another person named Sophia said the NGO helped her regain her passion for art, which had been stifled by her battle with depression. Emma and Ashley felt the strength of the women they helped, listening to each story with a profound sense of empathy. The NGO grew, and the community began to hear about its benefits. Women began to strengthen each other in workshops addressing issues such as self-awareness and empowerment. Emma and Ashley found their goal was not just to gain support. Instead, they were creating a connection among themselves that offered a new perspective on life. Thus, hope flourished, and each step taken became a testament that change was possible. Emma and Ashley had always aimed to change the world, even after the most difficult hardships. From the beginning of their friendship, they had the same desire to help the poorest people. After years of dedication and struggle, they founded an NGO that helps victims of domestic violence. At first, there were few resources, and many difficulties seemed insurmountable. However, their devotion to their causes kept them motivated. The NGO's influence began to gain strength in the community. Emma and Ashley were now symbols of hope and resilience rather than serving only a minority. A bond formed with each new story that came to them. Women who once felt isolated and voiceless gathered to seek freedom and dignity. They worked together to build a safe environment where they could share their experiences and find comfort. Emma and Ashley's team grew with professionals from various fields, such as social workers, psychologists, and lawyers, all dedicated to providing comprehensive assistance. A welcoming room became a refuge at the center of the NGO. It seemed like a bright shelter amid the darkness. The walls, adorned with drawings and messages of hope, showed the willpower of the women present. Each testimony of overcoming infused strength and renewal into the atmosphere. Emma and Ashley expanded their activities over time, participating in empowerment workshops, self-help meetings, and awareness campaigns. The NGO turned into a beacon that illuminated the darkness of violence. The events they held not only provided education, but also broke the silence on the subject, inspiring the community to unite and fight domestic violence. A crowd gathered on the day of the inauguration of the new headquarters to celebrate another important step in their journey. Emma and Ashley were surrounded by women who shone with new hope and had gone through desperate situations before. A sense of gratitude permeated the air between laughter and tears. The NGO was not just a project. It had become a true network of support, a community where every story was important and every voice had value. Emma and Ashley still ignited light, demonstrating that courage and solidarity could overcome the darkness of violence. Emma and Ashley sat in a corner of the cozy space that had become the community center on the NGO's 10th anniversary, as their work was a reminder that change was possible and that together they were stronger. The photos decorating the walls of events and victories seemed to tell stories that had no end. They exchanged emotional glances as if they could read each other's journey without speaking. Ashley looked at a picture of a community that had contributed to the transformation and remembered the difficulties she faced in the beginning. The first weekend they decided to organize a food drive was chaos. They had only a few bags, but the need for them was enormous. The helplessness was almost overwhelming. Emma regained her motivation when she reminded her friend that every gesture was important. Since then, the NGO had avoided looking back. The lack of resources and the community's initial resistance were just some of the many difficulties. But behind each challenge was an important lesson. They learned to turn needs into concrete actions by listening to the voices of those they helped. The resulting strength of that process was visible. Both were moved as they recalled the grateful looks of those who received food, shelter, and education. A sense of relief became evident as they reflected on what they had built. The NGO had turned into a symbol of hope and a beacon in the darkness for many individuals who felt lost. Their lives were marked by feelings of gratitude, and the stories of transformation around them echoed like a symphony of gratitude. However, the celebration wasn't just focused on the past. The two women knew the future was open, full of promises and challenges. Their determination to build a legacy that would last a long time was palpable in their hearts. They hoped to inspire more people, reach more communities, and expand the NGO's reach. Moreover, they knew that unity and empathy were the foundation of everything they had done while projecting the future. On that 10th anniversary, Emma and Ashley, working together, celebrated both what they had accomplished and the future that was yet to be written. The enthusiasm of that celebration had a significant impact not only on their lives, but also on many others who depended on their unwavering determination.